She came to court alone and walked away holding evidence that could topple more than a gavel. Before we begin, pause for a second. If you believe in fairness, in the right to be heard, and in standing up when power is used to silence the vulnerable, stop right now and hit that subscribe button. Because on this channel we tell the stories that some people would rather bury. This is one of them. The courthouse smelled of polish and old paper, the kind of smell that carried the weight of decisions. Outside, the city hummed, buses, traffic, the distant rattle of construction. But inside the stone walls of the county courthouse, time slowed to a different pulse, measured, formal, and oftentimes merciless. Monique Harper stepped into that hush like she stepped into a different world. She wore a navy coat, her son Isaiah's small backpack slung over one arm, and in her hands a thin file of paper that contained weeks of bank statements, text messages, emails, and a stack of forms proving she had followed every instruction given to her by the child support office. The file was part lifeline, part hope, a desperate attempt to keep what little she had to call a home. Monique was a single mother. She worked 2 jobs, evenings at a diner and second shift cleaning at the hospital. She came to court that day because a contempt citation had been lodged against her by her child's father, a fight over an old arrears figure that, in Monique's view, had been incorrectly tallied. She wasn't a lawyer. She was tired, and she carried the weary, fierce eye brightness of someone who refused to quit. The hall led to courtroom 3. Wooden benches lined the room in neat rows. Portraits of solemn-faced past judges looked down from their gilded frames. At the far end, the bench rose like an altar of law, and behind it sat Judge Harrison Wallace on most Tuesdays, a man whose robes matched the severity of his reputation. He had been the county's favorite for decades. No nonsense, conservative, and quick with a gavel. He also had a habit of telling people, loudly, deliberately, where he believed they belonged. Monique took her seat and waited as the docket dwindled. People filed in and out, watchers and those watched, small-town dramas, and enormous pain passing through those doors. She was late enough to miss the midday sun and early enough to feel its weight. Where her case was called, Monique rose. Her voice, when she spoke, was steady. "Your Honor, I have documentation proving payments were misapplied. The child support department sent me these notices that show." Judge Wallace cut her off with a hand. He did that sometimes, a small flick that flattened the moment. "Ms. Harper," he said, "the way someone checks a watch, we don't rehearse here. You either present your grounds succinctly or you waste the court's time." Monique blinked. She gathered herself. "I'm asking for recalculation, Your Honor." He looked down at her like she was a mystery he needed not in his court but in his world. "Ms. Harper, you know the rules. You have been non-compliant before. Are you asserting negligence by the child support office today, or are you asking for leniency for what appears to be a pattern of missed payments?" That word, pattern, landed heavy. A dozen faces in the room shifted. Monique's cheeks warmed. She had not missed a payment in months. She handed him the file. Wallace's eyes moved with practiced impatience across the pages. Then he did something Monique would never forget. He laughed. Not a small, private chuckle, but a loud, rolling sound intended to be heard by everyone. "This is a mess," he announced. "Ms. Harper, these are not documents of a woman who's organized. They are the papers of someone who can't manage her affairs." The courtroom murmured. "We could be here all day untangling every misstep." His tone sharpened. "Sometimes the system can't afford patience for certain lifestyles." Monique's ears filled with static. It wasn't the words so much as the way he said certain lifestyles. The implication in an old man's voice that she, by virtue of being young, black, and poor, should be regarded as less worthy of careful consideration. She told herself to stay calm. She had rehearsed this. "Your Honor," she said quietly, "these are official receipts, and the child support office's ledger shows this payment applied to the wrong account. I'm not asking for special treatment. I'm asking for a correction." He tapped the bench with his gavel. "Ms. Harper, I will entertain a motion if you can present one that the court can legally grant. Otherwise, this court has little patience for." He glanced at the gallery. "For those who clog the docket." That last phrase, "clog the docket," was so dismissive, so bracing that Monique felt as though the breath had been taken from the room. Her voice shook, but she did not break. Your Honor, I filed the motion. It was dated 2 weeks ago. The judge frowned. Noted. However, I will say this. If we're going to spend public resources on re-examination, we must ensure that the person present is willing to adhere to basic standards of conduct. Are you willing to accept court-ordered terms? Are you prepared to be supervised in the application of remedies? Monique pressed her palms together in her coat pockets. She had not expected to be lectured. She had expected answers. I am, Your Honor, she said. I just want what's fair. Judge Wallace's gaze sharpened. Fair? In law, Ms. Harper, the question of fairness is complex. But the court must also consider what is expedient. We must not allow personal narratives to override the system's efficiency. He said efficiency like a weapon. The courtroom shifted. Later, in the parking lot, Monique would replay the moment and the tone and know how easy it would be for an official to weaponize a word. She left court that day with the citation still active and the weight of the judge's laughter thinned in her pocket like an insult. She left resolved to push. She left wondering how, in a place that called itself impartial, a person's worth could appear to be a variable. This wasn't a story of one bad morning. It was the start of a series that would crack the community open like thin ice. Monique's friend Tessa recorded part of the hearing on her phone. The clip captured more than just dialogue. It caught the tone. On social media the next day, the clip spread. Judge Wallace laughs at single mom's documents. Local feeds were small rivers and in bigger currents. People shared, argued, and sent links to groups that tracked courthouse behavior. The clip hit the morning talk radio like a dropped stone. A local host, a fierce woman with a gravel voice, called the episode one more chain link in a system that treats mothers like convenience. The county newspaper picked it up, soft focus and concerned. The county turned. People began to come forward with small stories. Rude clerks, long wait times, judgments that landed harder on those with less. But the courthouse had its defenders too. Old white men posted in comment threads about courtroom order and how the law thrived on decorum. The judge was right, wrote one letter. We cannot let our courtrooms be clogged. For Monique, the fallout had two faces, shame in a moment and empowerment afterward. Strangers leaned on her at the grocery store. You did the right thing, a woman said, her eyes wet. A neighbor she barely knew handed her a paper bag of homemade cornbread. You fight, he whispered. Walls have ears, and offices have cameras. Within 48 hours a file appeared. A pattern of rulings authored by Wallace where outcomes correlated far more often against low-income parents than he would ever acknowledge. Someone at the courthouse, it wasn't clear who, began assembling the pieces. The data was dry, but its implication was not. This judge's record was not just strict, it was skewed. Monique's account of humiliation turned into a narrative of possible bias. She didn't ask for that. She simply wanted to be heard. But the world had interest in the story. What the judge had meant as a private correction, a check on an individual's candor, became a public question. Was the justice system a mirror or a machine that polished away some people's humanity? Then came the anonymous emails. They accused Monique of being a troublemaker looking for a fight, of being late to hearings, of sending rambling motions. They included cropped screenshots of social media posts taken out of context. A few lines suggested that she would cause trouble at the next hearing, a dog whistle threat from those who did not want the system disturbed. Monique went to Tessa's apartment that night and cried into a pillow. I don't know how to fight all of this, she said. Tessa squeezed her hand. You don't have to fight alone. What Tessa did next would change the angle of the story. She posted the full video, not the clipped Hall of Mirrors version, and wrote simply, watch the whole thing. Listen to how she's spoken to. The full of context video didn't make everyone an instant ally, but it clarified the scene for those willing to see it. For the first time, the courtroom's official laundry of dignity had a wrinkle, a folded piece of paper that wouldn't iron itself. The line clicked in the small kitchen as if someone had thrown open a door. Outside, the neighborhood carried on. Isaiah came into the kitchen with cereal, oblivious for now to the new map that lay open on the table. Monique ruffled his hair with hands that still smelled faintly of bus grease and coffee. She smiled at him, a simple, protective smile, and then returned to the files. The camera of the story lingered on that scene for a beat. A small house, a small boy, and a mother who had become, without asking, the axis of a truth people had tried to hide. And somewhere in the quiet offices that make decisions about stone and stucco and contracts, someone noticed a file missing from a drawer and perhaps thought, "Oh, that is a worry." The twist of the story was not only that a judge had been publicly checked. It was that one small act of public correction could stir currents that revealed the dangers of power unexamined. The final line of the day was a message that popped on Monique's phone. "We're getting calls. The paper wants more. Meet tonight." Monique put the phone down. The house hummed with quiet. Isaac's spoon clinking in a bowl. The refrigerator's low purr. The light from the kitchen swam across the files. She drew a breath and stood, feeling suddenly like a traveler who had been given a compass. The path forward might be long. The enemies might be well placed. But for the first time since her story began, she felt the strange buoyancy of a person who had been pushed to the edge and refused to fall. If this moved you, if you believe a single voice can expose a tangled web, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to the Untold Struggles. Your voice amplifies the small fights that become big truth. Don't let this story stop here. Join us for part 2.